Did you know that one of the greatest Western movies ever made was almost a complete disaster? High Noon, released in 1952, tells the story of a sheriff who has to face 4 dangerous gunmen all by himself. But here's the thing, the movie was shot in just 21 days, the main actor was terrified of horses, and the entire story happens in real time, meaning everything you watch happens in exactly 90 minutes, just like if you were actually living through it. This movie changed how people make Westerns forever. It's not just about cowboys and shootouts. It's about being brave when you're alone, standing up for what's right, and never giving up even when everyone else has abandoned you. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about High Noon. Fact number 20. The movie happens in real time, just like a live broadcast. Imagine watching a movie where everything takes 90 minutes and the story also takes 90 minutes of in-world time. Sounds confusing, right? Well, that's exactly what High Noon does, and almost nobody had tried this before. Director Fred Zinnemann wanted you to feel trapped. He wanted your heart to beat faster as the clock ticked down. The movie opens with a clock showing 10:40 in the morning, and the final shootout happens at noon. Every scene was carefully timed so that exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes passes, both in the movie and in real life. This creates something magical. When you watch the movie, you feel the same pressure the main character feels. The tension doesn't stop. There's no scene that takes you away from the danger. It's like the whole movie is holding its breath. Most Westerns before this one jumped around in time. They showed you different days, different weeks, sometimes months. But High Noon refused to do that. Every second mattered. What looked like a simple storytelling choice was actually a bold experiment that had never been done before in a Western film. Fact number 19. Gary Cooper nearly refused the entire role. The star of High Noon was Gary Cooper, one of the biggest movie stars of his time. But here's what's wild. He almost turned down the role completely. Gary Cooper was actually sick while making this movie. He had stomach problems, and he was tired. He didn't feel like playing a scared sheriff who had to face danger alone. The role made him uncomfortable because his character wasn't a tough guy who shoots first and asks questions later. Will Kane, the main character, was a man full of doubt and fear. He was supposed to look weak at times. Gary Cooper built his entire movie career on playing confident, powerful men. This role felt wrong to him at first. The script was strange. The idea of real-time storytelling seemed impossible. But something changed his mind. Maybe he read the script more carefully. Maybe he understood that this wasn't a simple action movie. Maybe he realized this was a chance to show the world that he could play someone real and broken, not just heroic. Whatever happened, Gary Cooper decided to take the chance, and his performance became legendary. The fear in his eyes was real. The tiredness in his voice was genuine, not just amazing acting, but Gary Cooper finally allowing himself to be human on screen. Fact number 18. Most famous actors turned down the role. First, before Gary Cooper said yes, almost everyone in Hollywood said no. The script was sent to some of the biggest stars of that time, and they rejected it. Montgomery Clift said no. Marlon Brando said no. Even John Wayne, the king of westerns, turned it down. These were the biggest names in movies, and they all thought the role was too sad, too weak, too different. John Wayne actually said he hated the whole idea of the movie. He thought a real man would never run around asking for help like Will Kane does. For John Wayne, a Western hero should be tough and never show fear. The role seemed backwards to him. Ava Gardner, one of the most beautiful actresses in the world, also said no to playing Kane's ex-girlfriend. So did several other stars. Fred Zinnemann kept hearing the same thing over and over. This story won't work. Nobody wants to see a scared hero. Nobody wants to watch a Western with no big action scenes until the very end. People want confidence, not worry. People want shooting and fighting, not a man checking the clock and feeling scared. But Zinnemann believed in his vision. He refused to give up. And when Gary Cooper finally said yes, everything changed. Sometimes the people who say no help, you find the right people who understand your dream. Fact number 17. The famous theme song was written in just 30 minutes. The song you hear in High Noon is called "Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling." It's stuck in people's heads for decades. Some people remember the song better than they remember the whole movie. But here's the crazy part. Songwriter Dmitri Tiomkin wrote it in just 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Most songs take hours, days, or weeks to write. Composers usually sit at a piano and struggle. They cross things out. They change melodies. They try different words. But Tiomkin heard something in his head, and the song just poured out. His wife was actually in the room when he wrote it, and she was amazed at how fast it came to him. He played it for the director Fred Zinnemann, and Zinnemann loved it immediately. There was no second version. There was no debate about whether to change it. It was perfect the first time. The song became so famous that it won an Academy Award. A song that took 30 minutes to write won one of the biggest prizes in all of movies. The lyrics are simple, and that's what makes them powerful. Do not forsake me, oh my darling. Just simple, honest words about not being abandoned. When you hear that song, you don't hear something complicated or fancy. You hear something that came straight from the heart, almost like magic flowing out of a composer's fingers in half an hour. Fact number 16. The main actor was afraid of horses, which is a huge problem. In a Western, Gary Cooper loved acting, but he had a problem. He was actually nervous around horses. In a Western movie, you need to ride horses. You need to look comfortable and strong on a horse, but Gary Cooper would feel anxious and tense whenever he got near them. The movie makers had to work around this fear. They couldn't just tell him to get over it. They had to be creative. They brought in horse trainers who specially prepared calm, gentle horses for Gary Cooper to ride. These weren't wild, unpredictable horses. They were the kindest, most patient horses available. Even with these careful choices, Gary Cooper would show tension in certain scenes. His discomfort with horses actually made his character seem more worried and less confident, which actually worked perfectly for the story of Will Kane, a man facing his own doubts. What was supposed to be a weakness became an asset. The fear in Gary Cooper's eyes when writing was real fear, not pretend fear. When you watch him on horseback, you see a man who is genuinely uncomfortable and genuinely brave at the same time. He's scared of the horse, but he keeps riding. He's unsure of himself, but he keeps going forward. Not just amazing acting, but Gary Cooper's real anxiety making the character feel more human and true. Fact number 15. Almost everyone wanted to cut the famous clock-checking scenes. Throughout High Noon, the camera keeps cutting to clocks. Tick-tock, tick-tock. We see clocks on walls, clocks in stores, clocks on the railroad station. The director, Fred Zinnemann, kept using this same trick over and over. Show a clock. Show the sheriff's worried face. Show another clock. It seems simple, but it was controversial. During early test screenings, many people hated it. They thought it was boring. They thought showing clocks over and over again was lazy filmmaking. Studio executives wanted Zinnemann to remove these scenes. They said the audience was there to watch actors and action, not to watch time pass on a clock face. Zinnemann refused. He believed that the clocks were the heartbeat of the entire movie. The clocks weren't just decoration. They were making you feel the pressure. They were making time feel real. Every clock check was a reminder that death was coming at noon. Zinnemann trusted his instincts. He kept the clocks in. And you know what happened? Those clock scenes became one of the most famous and copied techniques in all of cinema. Hundreds of movies after High Noon used ticking clocks to build tension. What looked boring and repetitive became a masterclass in how to make an audience nervous without any words or action. Sometimes the simplest ideas are the most powerful. Fact number 14. The entire movie was shot in only 21 days. When movies are made, they usually take weeks or months to shoot. Sometimes they take longer than a year of filming. But High Noon was different. Fred Zinnemann shot the entire movie in just 21 days. 21 days. Think about how short that is. That means the director had to know exactly what he wanted before the cameras even started rolling. There was no time for experiments or second thoughts. Every shot had to be planned perfectly. The actors had to be ready to go. The crew had to move fast. There was pressure on everyone, and that pressure somehow made its way into the movie. You can feel the rush in every frame. The actors seemed tense because they actually were tense. The crew seemed focused because they had to be. Some people think this super-fast shooting schedule is why the movie feels so real and raw. There was no time for overthinking or making things too perfect. Everything was happening in the moment, just like the story itself. Movies that take a long time to film can sometimes feel polished and cold. But High Noon feels alive because everyone was racing against the clock, just like the main character in the story. The filmmaking process matched the story's feeling, and that connection made something magical happen. Fact number 13. The supporting actors were actually major stars, not extras. When you watch High Noon, you might not recognize all the faces, but you're actually watching some very important actors in smaller roles. Katy Jurado was a big star in Mexican cinema, and this was one of her first major American movies. Lloyd Bridges was becoming famous as an actor and would later become a huge television star. Grace Kelly was just starting her movie career, and she would eventually become royalty when she married the Prince of Monaco. Ian MacDonald played the villain, and he was a respected character actor. The thing is, all these talented people played smaller roles in the story. They weren't the main character, but director Fred Zinnemann filled his entire cast with real talent. He didn't use unknown actors or just hire whoever was cheap. He hired serious performers who understood how to bring depth to every scene, even small ones. This was unusual for a Western in 1952. Westerns were often made quickly with whoever was available. But Zinnemann treated this movie like important art. Every role mattered. Every actor mattered. The result was that even the smallest scenes felt real and important. When Gary Cooper's wife speaks, you believe her. When the villains appear, they seem truly dangerous. When townspeople refuse to help, you feel their betrayal. What could have been a B-movie with unknown actors became a masterpiece because every single person on set was a real professional. Fact number 12. The screenwriter, Fred Zinnemann, based the story on a simple magazine article. Director Fred Zinnemann didn't invent the story of High Noon from his imagination. The original idea came from a short magazine story called The Tin Star, which was published in a magazine for people who liked Western stories. The original story was much simpler and shorter. It didn't have all the famous characters or the real-time idea. But Zinnemann read it and saw something special hiding inside. He saw the potential for a much bigger, much deeper story. Zinnemann hired screenwriter Carl Foreman to turn the magazine article into a movie script. Carl Foreman completely rewrote the story. He added the clock ticking. He added the ex-girlfriend and the wife who just got married. He added all the townspeople who refused to help. He created the whole idea of real-time storytelling. He took a small magazine story and transformed it into a masterpiece. Carl Foreman won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. What started as a few paragraphs in a magazine became one of the greatest Westerns ever made. This shows how a good idea can hide in the smallest places, and how important it is to really look at something and imagine what it could become. Fact number 11. Director Fred Zinnemann almost quit the project. Halfway through making a movie is hard. Making a fast movie with pressure is even harder. Fred Zinnemann had directed many movies before High Noon, but this project was different. The pressure was enormous. The studio didn't believe in the movie. Some of the cast members were worried. The producers kept asking questions. The budget was tight. Nothing about this project felt easy. Halfway through filming, Zinnemann was exhausted. He was thinking about walking away. He was thinking about letting someone else finish the movie. He was questioning whether his vision was even correct. Maybe all those people who said the movie wouldn't work were right. Maybe he was making a huge mistake. But something happened that changed his mind. When he looked at the footage they'd already filmed, he saw something incredible. The scenes were working. The tension was real. The actors were brilliant. The clock-checking technique was actually creating exactly the feeling he wanted. Zinnemann realized he had to keep going, no matter how hard it was. He found strength to continue. And that decision to keep pushing forward resulted in one of the greatest westerns of all time. Sometimes the moment you want to give up is right before everything comes together. Fact number 10. Grace Kelly's dress was custom-made, and it cost more than some actors' salaries. Grace Kelly played Will Kane's new bride, and she wears a beautiful white wedding dress in the movie. That dress wasn't just any dress pulled from a costume closet. It was custom-designed and custom-built for Grace Kelly specifically. The costume designer spent a huge amount of money creating this dress. At that time, the dress cost more money than some of the smaller actors on the movie made for their entire role in the film. Grace Kelly would only wear the dress for a few scenes, but the costume designers made sure it was absolutely perfect. Every stitch was placed carefully. Every detail matched the style of the time period. The dress had to show that Grace Kelly's character was from the East Coast, that she was refined and civilized and different from the rough Western town. The dress was a character itself. When you watch the movie and see that white dress, you're looking at an expensive piece of clothing that represented the clash between civilization and the wilderness. That dress was also important for Grace Kelly's career. She looked so beautiful and elegant that directors noticed her. Movie producers wanted her. Within a few years, Grace Kelly would become one of the most famous actresses in Hollywood. Some people say that dress helped launch her entire career. What looked like just a costume choice was actually an investment in a future superstar. Fact number 9. Many famous Western actors refused the role because of politics. Here's a secret that people don't always talk about. High Noon came out during a time in America when there was a lot of fear and anger about politics. Some actors refused the role because they thought the movie's message was about a different kind of politics, not just a Western shootout. The story of a man standing alone, refused help by his town, seemed like a message. It seemed like it was saying something about people who speak up when others are silent. Some powerful people in Hollywood didn't like that message. They thought the movie was making political points that they disagreed with. Director Fred Zinnemann had made other movies that made people think about important ideas. This made some actors nervous about joining the project. John Wayne's refusal to be in the movie wasn't just about the character being weak. Wayne was from a different political world than Zinnemann. They disagreed about what stories should be told and what messages movies should send. But Zinnemann didn't change his movie to make people happy. He kept his vision. He made the story he believed in. And even though some people were angry about the movie's message, others loved it for exactly that reason. Sometimes a movie is more than just entertainment. Sometimes it says something about the world. Fact number 8. The final shootout was filmed in one day and almost went completely wrong. The most famous part of High Noon is the final gunfight at noon. It's quick and violent and shocking. The whole thing is over in moments. But here's what people don't know. They only had one day to film this entire sequence. One day. The most important scene in the entire movie, and they had 24 hours to get it right. The stunt coordinators had to plan everything perfectly. The actors had to hit their marks exactly right. The camera operators had to catch every moment. There was almost no room for mistakes, and mistakes did happen. One of the stunt performers got hurt during the filming. Not seriously, but enough that everyone got worried. They had to stop filming for a while and make sure everyone was okay. Then they had to keep going because they didn't have time to film it again. The actors were nervous. Gary Cooper was particularly worried because this was real danger mixed with fake danger, and it was hard to know where one ended and the other began. But somehow, through all the chaos and worry and fear, they filmed one of the greatest shootout scenes in Western movie history. It looks quick and clean on screen, but it was messy and stressful behind the camera. What looked simple was actually a miracle of planning and luck and pure determination. Fact number 7. The townspeople who refused to help were based on real stories. Director Fred Zinnemann didn't just make up the idea of townspeople refusing to help the sheriff. He based it on real stories from the Old West. Zinnemann researched actual situations where sheriffs faced gunfighters alone because people in town were too scared to help. In real history, townspeople often made excuses. They said they had families to protect. They said it wasn't their problem. They said the sheriff was paid to handle danger, so why should they risk their lives? Zinnemann interviewed historians and read old journals and newspapers from the time. He learned that the rule of the Old West wasn't as simple as cowboys fighting cowboys. There was a lot of complicated human nature involved. There was fear, there was selfishness, there was people choosing safety over doing what's right. Zinnemann decided that this human truth was more important than just showing action and adventure. He put this complicated truth right in the middle of his movie. So when you watch the townspeople refuse to help Will Kane, you're watching something that actually happened in real Western history. It's not just made-up drama. It's based on actual human behavior from actual history. This makes the movie more real and more powerful than if Zinnemann had just invented drama. The movie shows us who we really are, not who we pretend to be. Fact number 6. The movie was almost filmed in color, but the director insisted on black and white, believe it or not. When High Noon was being made, color movies were becoming more common. Technicolor cameras existed. Movies were starting to look bright and colorful. But director Fred Zinnemann insisted on shooting High Noon in black and white. This was a choice that some studio executives disagreed with. They thought color would look more impressive and would attract more audiences. Zinnemann refused. He wanted the bleakness of black and white. He wanted the gray, dusty streets and the shadows in doorways. He wanted the movie to feel like watching real life, not a painted picture. Black and white made the movie feel older, more serious, more like a real Western from history. The shadows in black and white also helped build the tension. You couldn't see clearly into the darkness. You didn't know what was waiting around the corner. Color would have been too bright and too clear. Black and white made you nervous. It made you feel like the sheriff, unable to see danger clearly, only knowing that it's coming. Today, decades later, black and white makes the movie look even more classic and beautiful. If Zinnemann had agreed to color, the movie might look dated and old-fashioned. But black and white looks timeless. White looks. Zinnemann's stubborn choice to stick with black and white turned out to be one of the smartest decisions in movie history. Fact number 5. The movie was a box office disappointment at first, but then became a classic. Here's something surprising. When High Noon first came out in 1952, it didn't make a lot of money. People didn't rush to theaters. It wasn't a huge hit. Some people thought the movie was too slow. Some people thought it was too different from other Westerns. Some people thought nothing happened until the very end. The studio was disappointed. Critics were mixed. It seemed like High Noon might be forgotten. But something strange happened over time. People kept thinking about the movie. They kept talking about it. They rented it and watched it again. More people discovered it. Film students studied it. Directors learned from it. Slowly, High Noon became recognized as a masterpiece. It won many Academy Awards. It was selected by the Library of Congress for the National Film Registry, which means it's considered one of the most important American movies ever made. What started as a box office failure became one of the most respected and beloved Westerns of all time. This shows that sometimes the world isn't ready for something new. Sometimes the greatest art doesn't make money right away. Sometimes you have to wait for people to understand what you've created. Decades later, everyone agrees that High Noon is a masterpiece. It just took time for the world to catch up. Fact number 4. Grace Kelly almost didn't get the role because of age. Grace Kelly was actually very young when she was cast in High Noon. She was in her early 20s, and the role required playing a wife who was also a Quaker woman with strong beliefs. Some producers thought Grace Kelly was too young and too beautiful to play this serious role. They thought audiences would be distracted by her beauty. They wanted an older actress who looked more stern and serious. The casting director believed in Grace Kelly anyway. They knew she had talent beyond just being pretty. They saw that she could handle serious, dramatic scenes. They fought for her to get the role, and they were right. Grace Kelly brought something special to the role. She showed that beauty and seriousness could exist in the same person. She played a woman with real beliefs and real strength, not just a decoration in the story. Her performance was powerful, and it helped her get bigger and bigger roles. Within a few years, she was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. The decision to cast Grace Kelly despite her age turned out to be perfect. It showed that sometimes the right actor is the person everyone else doubts. Fact number 3. The movie's message made some politicians angry. High Noon premiered during a political time in America when people were investigating other people for their political beliefs. Some powerful people thought the movie was making a political statement about this situation. They thought the story of a man standing alone while everyone else abandons him was a comment on what was happening in real America. Director Fred Zinnemann never said this was his intention, but people interpreted the movie as political anyway. Powerful politicians who didn't like the movie's possible message tried to damage its reputation. They told people not to watch it. They said Zinnemann was making communist propaganda, even though that wasn't true. Some actors became nervous about being associated with the movie. But Fred Zinnemann didn't apologize. He didn't change anything. He stood by his movie, just like Will Kane stands by his values. The courage of the main character matched the courage of the director in real life. In the end, the movie survived the political attacks. It became more famous because of them, not less famous. The controversy actually made more people curious about what all the fuss was about. What seemed like damage to the movie actually helped it. Sometimes standing firm for what you believe in is the best strategy. Fact number 2. The original ending was much darker and different. The movie we see today has an ending where Will Kane faces the villains and defeats them. It's violent and shocking, but then it's over. But the original script had a different ending in mind. The original ending was supposed to be much darker. In early versions, Will Kane was supposed to lose. He was supposed to be shot down by the villains. The movie was supposed to end with the hero dead, with him failing to save the day. Director Fred Zinnemann changed his mind about this ending. He realized that showing the hero defeated would be too sad and too dark for audiences. He also realized that the real victory in the story wasn't about winning a gunfight. The real victory was about standing up for what's right, even when you're afraid. Even if Will Kane won or lost the actual fight, he already won by choosing to do the right thing instead of running away. So Zinnemann changed the ending to show Kane surviving and defeating the villains. But he also showed Kane and his wife leaving town, leaving behind the place that refused to help him. It's a victory, but it's also a loss. Kane wins the fight, but loses his home. This mixed ending is more powerful than either a completely happy ending or a completely sad ending. It shows that life is complicated. Sometimes you win and lose at the same time. Fact number 1. The clock showing noon in the final scene is actually showing 10 o'clock. Here's a detail so small that almost nobody ever notices it. In the final scene of the movie, when the clock is supposed to show noon and all the danger is happening, if you look very carefully at the clock on the building, it actually shows 10 o'clock, not 12 o'clock. The movie spent this entire time making sure we were thinking about time and watching clocks. The whole movie is about reaching noon. The entire tension builds toward noon. And then, in the final scene, the clock is wrong. Is this an accident? Is this a mistake? Or is it on purpose? Some people think it was an honest mistake made during filming. Maybe the clock broke. Maybe the prop people forgot to set it correctly. Maybe nobody noticed until it was too late to fix it. Other people think it was intentional. Maybe director Fred Zinnemann did it on purpose to make people question what they're seeing. Maybe he wanted to remind us that even though we're obsessed with time, time is just a human invention. The villains don't care what the clock says. Will Kane doesn't care what the clock says. The only thing that matters is doing what's right in the moment. Whether the wrong clock was a mistake or genius, it became one of the most famous details in cinema history. It's the kind of tiny detail that film students still argue about decades later. Bonus fact: the secret behind the real trains in the background. Here's a story that very few people know about High Noon. Director Fred Zinnemann wanted the movie to feel absolutely real. He didn't want it to feel like a Western filmed on a Hollywood studio set with fake backgrounds. He wanted real locations and real elements of the Old West still visible in 1952. So Zinnemann chose to film High Noon in a real town called Sonora, California, and the surrounding area. This was smart, but it created an enormous problem. During the filming, real trains would pass through the area. Real trains would be running on tracks near the filming locations. When you're making a movie, you need total silence and total control. You can't have real trains running in the background making noise and potentially ruining your shots. The filmmakers had to coordinate with the railroad companies. They had to schedule filming times around real train schedules. If a train was coming, they had to stop filming. They had to wait. They had to be patient. This sounds like it would ruin the filming schedule, but Fred Zinnemann saw it differently. He saw it as an opportunity. On several occasions, when Zinnemann noticed a real train approaching in the distance, he would keep filming. He would let the train pass in the background of his shots. The sound of the real train mixed with the movie's dialogue and music. The rumbling of the real train became part of the movie's atmosphere. If you listen carefully to the background of High Noon, you can hear the sounds of actual trains from the time period. It's not a sound effect added in post-production. It's a real train recorded in real time during actual filming. This detail makes the movie feel more real because it actually is more real. Zinnemann didn't shy away from the complications of real-world filmmaking. He embraced them and made them part of his art. One small choice to film in a real location with real trains changed the entire texture and feeling of the movie. Old tools, new magic. High Noon isn't just a Western movie about a gunfight at noon. It's a story about what it means to be brave. It's about standing up for what's right even when you're alone. It's about not running away when things get hard. It's about honoring your promises and your values even when the whole world seems to be against you. Director Fred Zinnemann created something timeless. He didn't just make a movie that was popular in 1952. He made a movie that still matters today, decades later. He made a movie that teaches us about courage and loneliness and doing the right thing. The actors brought their real fears and real talents to their roles. The crew worked fast and hard to create something magical. The choices to use black and white, to tell the story in real time, to fill the cast with serious actors, to build tension with ticking clocks, every choice added up to create a masterpiece. High Noon shows us that the greatest strength isn't being the strongest or the fastest. The greatest strength is standing firm when you're afraid. It's choosing to do what's right even when it costs you everything. If you enjoyed these 20 weird facts and this extra bonus story about the hidden trains, please subscribe to our channel for more amazing movie secrets. Every single movie hides stories like these. Every film has surprising details that most people never discover. We're here to uncover these stories, one movie at a time. Thank you for listening to these tales about High Noon. Remember, the most powerful stories are often the ones that remind us to be brave, to stand tall, and to never abandon what we believe in. Subscribe now, and let's keep discovering the magic hidden inside the movies we love.